bring this meeting to order if we could, please. Thanks all, appreciate it. Everybody's having a good time today. Chatting. So this is the regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, and for the presentation of the 2020 Annual Operating Plan. Would you please call the roll?
Yes. Mayor Houston.
I'm here.
Councilor Green.
Here.
President Reed.
Yes.
All present.
All right, everyone present. Thank you all. Items presented for the first time. Number 1, 19.066. A request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of contracts and leases for various city departments as listed on Exhibit A. Number 2, 19.067. Request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of intra-departmental and interdepartmental transfers from various city departments as listed on Exhibit B. Number 3, 19.068. Request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of transfers between projects for capital improvement funds listed on Exhibit C. Number 4, 19.069. Request from the Director of Human Services to add 1 Program Manager 2 to their table of organization. Number 5, 19.070. Request from the Director of Airports for approval of Board Bill Number 3. This ordinance authorizes a lease agreement with the FAA to use designated and undeveloped land for the design, development, construction, and operation of an additional component to the low-level wind shear alert system. Number 6, 19.071, request from the Comptroller's Office, Deputy Comptroller, Finance and Development for approval of Board Bill to be determined. This ordinance authorizes the issuance of a Series 2019 Airport Revenue Refunding Bonds not to exceed $100 million and Series 2019 Airport Revenue Bonds not to exceed $35 million. After those 6 items, we'll have a presentation from the Budget Director on the 2020 budget.
I move for approval of items 1 through 6.
Would you guys want to take up 6 separately?
No, I do
The board
not.
bill?
No, sir.
I'd like to take up number 6 separately.
Would you like to amend the motion?
No, I do not. It's not my amendment. I would like to move for items 1 through 6 to be approved.
I thought there was a question about item number 6.
Is there a second so we can discuss item 6?
Yeah, I second that motion. so
Okay, thank
we
you.
can
We can discuss it.
For discussion purposes. I guess the thing on item 6, we got this Thursday.
Are we discussing the motion?
We're discussing item number 6. He has a
Item.
question. He seconded my motion for approval of items 1 through 6.
So we're gonna discuss this item 6. and
Okay,
we can get
great.
there and then something later. Item number 6 is a 106-page bill, board bill. We're just getting back in session technically today. I think we got this Thursday evening. We had caucus Friday, then we had a full board meeting yesterday and a full board meeting today. This E&A meeting is normally a week and a half from now, right? This is the first time since I've been here that we've had an E&A meeting that they were sworn in, so like literally, this is a 106-page bill that I would have had a week to look at, but I have not had any time to look at all. And the way, it looks like a really good bill, and I'm excited about it because it can save the city a lot of money and everything. So, but since it's a board bill, if we introduce it on the 26th, and that'd be the first day we can introduce board bills on the 26th. We count back 3 full weeks from there, that'll put us, at 5/10, right? We would still have an E&A meeting to approve whatever the final product is that comes from the board. Because if we take this up today and if there are changes in it, from the board, because it still has to pass the board, the full board of Aldermen. If there are changes in it, then it'll have to come back to the Board of E&A, depending on the significance of those changes. And not having a chance to even look at it yet, it's just kind of, it's just tough, even though the title and everything seems like a good thing. So that's why I would love to, have time to take a look at this. It wouldn't slow it down any, because it still would go to the full board on 4/26. I'd make sure it got a really quick committee hearing and help marshal it through and get it through the board. And then on 5/10, we would have a, E&A meeting and be able to bring it back to E&A.
On 5/10?
Or between 5/10 and 5/17.
So is that your schedule that you're suggesting to me right now, Mr. President? That is your schedule and suggested schedule?
Yeah, I think that, because then it works, because we would be, because no matter what we do today, it still has to go through the full board and is subject to changes at the full board. And if we change it at the full board, we'd still have to come back here for a second time to take it up again. But again, it sounds like something that's really good, so I'm excited about it. But because this E&A was moved up over a week from what it should be.
I don't think it's moved up over a week. And maybe if it is moved up, it's because we've got not only the holiday that's coming, we've got the presentation of the budget, which will be today. And of course, that is timely, and it's normally at this April's E&A meeting.
Yeah, but
So I'm listening.
The meeting has never been on the day we sworn in, because our first meeting back, that's why our first meeting back is on the technically gonna be on the 26th.
Well, it was moved up from Wednesday. Today is Tuesday. So that's only one day. You're saying that it's been moved up weeks. It's moved up one day and so what you're saying is that you need more time, and I hear you.
Yeah, because this is just a big deal.
Well, you have more redevelopment bills that are 4 to 5 times that. And I understand that if you need more time, which he did need more time, in past you took a break. And I'm willing to stay today for you to take a break if need be. And I have my professionals here to give presentation, to give whatever it is that you would think that you would need in order to move this forward. Your time schedule doesn't work to present this in time to the airport commissions at, I believe it's their first meeting in May, and I'm not sure, but I think that's May 1st. So you would possibly be wanting to have a special E&A in addition to those that are already scheduled.
Yeah.
We have 2 E&A meetings scheduled after this one. Is that not correct, or at least one?
The next one scheduled is on April 29th, so that's only about 13 days away, I guess. I mean, we could take it up on April 29th.
And what you
Our
haven't
next
done
one's
is
on
really
the
given
15th.
me any.
April
Any
29th.
reason to delay today, is what I'm not
Yeah,
hearing.
but we will have an E&A meeting on, I think I'm looking at it somewhere around April 15th.
April.
Not April 15th,
May.
but May 15th.
Our regular scheduled
And
May
that's
meeting.
too late. If you
No,
wanting to
'cause
delay
they
this
come out of
one.
the board meeting on the 17th.
Well, I won't argue the point. I'll have my team talk about the schedule, if you don't mind.
Yeah, we
There
can
is
talk about it.
as you may know, or someone in this room that, participate on the finance calls, understand the scheduling of these kinds of financings, which started months ago. Formally, we started this last September of 2018. And so if you were here September of 2018, then you would know, because someone on your staff would know, that we selected the team during 2018, September, to start the process, to formally start the process. Email trails are available to prove that this administration, as well as your office, have been well informed. So today, to tell me, no, I am still speaking, and I'm not trying to not honor what you're saying. I'm just trying to understand basically what you're saying. Sometimes when you don't know something, you don't know. But, from 2017, when this administration began to speak to me about this particular refunding, I understood that they knew that it was pending. And one of the things that this administration informed me about was the president's new tax laws may cause some issues. So it's been not only months but years that this administration, through its development director, has been giving an opinion on this particular bond issue that I am aware of, and I have emails to back that up.
Okay.
So that's what I wanted to say about, you know, your not having the knowledge about this.
All right, but here's
Coming.
Here's my question. If we don't vote on this today, how does that change the timetable? It can't pass, it can't
Let
come out
me,
any faster
let
than
me
the board's
ask
will
Jim
adopt
if
it.
he, Jim Garvaglia has been, you know, working on this tirelessly, if he wants to speak to it, or if one of the professionals wants to speak to the timetable, please.
Could I ask a
The
question?
timetable is,
Well, we'll let him
You'll
speak to
get
the
to me.
timetable.
Okay, great. You guys go ahead.
The idea was that we would get it approved today, introduced on the 26th, as you said, and we built in a time frame.
but it doesn't have to be approved today to be introduced.
I understand that, but the idea was that we would get it approved today, we would present it, and hope to get it approved at the airport commission on the 1st. Then it would be introduced on the 26th. We would build in a 2-week time frame, a window to get it through committee, and then have it second read on the 10th, perfected on the 17th, final passed on the 24th. Now, after that,
Which
of
is the
course.
timetable I have here,
Sorry?
which is the exact same timetable I have here.
Well, okay, and then from there, we are going to then go and price this deal. It's tentatively set up for the 13th of June, and we are to close prior to the end of the year. Because if we do not, we erode, every day that we don't close after July 1, we erode the net present value savings that we are hoping to get.
All right, but according to what you just said, you just outlined the timetable that I've just presented. The only difference is, us voting on this today does absolutely nothing. It can be introduced, it does not slow up the time frame for it to be introduced, it can still be introduced, on the 26th. It will still have a full opportunity for the next regularly scheduled ENA meeting to be brought up before the next regularly scheduled ENA meeting, and still meet the time frame. I mean, we just outlined the exact same time frame. Only thing that it does by not voting on this today at ENA is give us an opportunity to read through what's in front of us. The board bill will still be introduced. It will still be assigned to committee. Committee hearings will still happen as you just outlined them. It will come out of the board as you just outlined them. And we have a full ENA meeting before then to bring it in out of ENA. So I just don't understand.
I
That's the only-
truly don't understand why you believe and that you have not had the opportunity, but I'll allow the mayor to ask a question if she wants to. I hate to go back and forth without honoring the fact that you have a question. But I'm just really confounded right now as to your saying that you don't know what this is about, that you haven't had enough time. It is confounding.
We did not have a 100-page board bill before
Well,
last Thursday.
we
That
had
just
boxes
didn't
of
exist.
other board bills brought to this table, which you found yourself not ready to act on, and then we took a 15-minute break for you to take time
No,
to
we
get
have been
ready and
reviewing.
came back, and then you voted yes. So you're telling me today that you're not willing to have a presentation today on this?
No, let's have a
You're not-
presentation.
then-
I think
That
we
was
should.
the question I was
I
trying
think
to
we should
ask.
have a
Are,
presentation.
I'm
do you
prepared
have
for-
someone to make a
yes,
presentation?
Yes,
We
I
should
am.
Could we
that
see
for
that
sure.
presentation?
Well, the presentation is here, and if my financial advisor wouldn't mind, he's present here. Ramon, if you wouldn't mind.
I'd be happy to answer any questions, or if you want, I could go through.
Why don't you take the highlights and go through it?
Okay.
I have not seen this before.
This is the presentation, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
You've probably had come through your office emails from Jim Garabaglia with this information on it coming to your staff, which, you know, they come through, and of course, in the thread, lots of questions has been asked by Linda Martinez as to the issue. We have been responding on a daily basis for the last 2 weeks about this issue. There is in that thread, if I'm not mistaken, the city councilors in that thread along with other pertinent offices. So this is no secret to staff and management. This is quite a big deal for the city. Finances is always a big deal for the city, and for someone to say that we are not doing our due diligence as the comptroller's office staff, it's just certainly surprising to me
Well,
today.
let me say, I don't think
I'm
anyone,
not saying that.
Well, that's what I'm hearing.
well, no, I don't think anyone's saying,
apologize.
Well, when you say you don't know about this issue, then you're telling me that I'm not doing my job.
no, we have
So
a process
say what you
here.
really mean. What is it that you really mean?
Let me say what I mean. We have
Please
a
do.
process here.
You mean in the mayor's office, your
No,
process? What
no, I
process are you
mean
talking
here
about?
at the Board of Aldermen.
This is the Board of
The
E and A,
Board of the
Madam
E and A
Mayor.
and the
Mhm.
Board of Aldermen. Board bills go through the
But
Board
we're
of E and A.
not
Just let me
in the
finish for
Board
one
of
sentence.
Aldermen.
I actually understand that. The process here is to bring things before the Board of E and A and for us to be able to ask questions and understand what it is, and then for that same process to go through at the Board of Aldermen. I understand there's a time schedule here, and I appreciate that. So what I'd like to hear is just the presentation as to what this is about and why it's a good deal. I did get a few remarks forwarded to me today, some questions, Jim, that you answered. Thank you for that. And so I'd like to hear about what this is so that then we can all be informed to vote on the board bill.
Ramon?
Yeah, sure.
Ramon Ortega, I'm with Seaver Cisneros Shea, financial advisor to the city and airport. So over the past year or so, we've been monitoring the 2009 A1 bonds. They have a call date of July 1st, 2019. So as you get closer to the call date, you want to see if there's any market opportunities that would provide savings to the airport/city. We have been, over the past year, we have run market scenarios, we have done different structures, we have evaluated various alternatives. At that time, about 6 months ago, we decided that waiting for a current refunding closer to the call date was probably the best, most efficient use of generating the most potential amount of savings. With that in mind, we decided we were going to select a team so that when we were ready to pull the trigger, we would take advantage of the market opportunity. We have been very cognizant of what has been going on with the potential privatization. And we have
You're on
been,
that team as well, right?
we are, yes. We have been very cognizant of that effort, and then we have made sure to take that into consideration while doing all of our evaluations throughout all the alternatives that we've looked at. As was placed before you, there's the 2009 A1s have an outstanding part of about $93 million that are callable on July 1st, 2019. We're allowed to call the bonds up to 90 days before the call date, but given the time frame and how things have been pushed around here and there, we're probably going to get there just right before July 1st. Now, the issue with issuing a refunding after July 1st is that it becomes a diminishing asset. You actually lose savings because you're losing the market that you could have pulled the trigger on. So with that being said, let's shift over to the new money. Our understanding is that these are projects that are part of the needed operations of the city, of the airport. It's about $24 million.
About 24 million.
And it's not a, the not to exceed number was 35, just to give some wiggle room, but I think the latest and greatest number I've heard was 24. It's not an exuberant amount, but tying it to the refunding actually gives you efficiencies in cost because of economies of scale. There are certain costs that are fixed, certain costs that are variable. By doing them together, you just become a more efficient transaction. Now, looking at the privatization, how have we considered the privatization into the structure of our potential transaction? We have tried to balance this in three ways. We wanted to protect the city, protect the airport, and protect the bondholders. Because should the lease come to fruition, which, you know, I don't know if there is a decision yet, I don't think there is one. But we wanted to protect the city, to make sure that the cost to the city, should they need to pull the trigger on this transaction to defease the bonds, it would be minimal to no cost to the city, or a similar cost to leaving the bonds outstanding. So to the city, it should be net somewhat neutral, while also balancing doing what's best for the airport and locking in that savings in a favorable market environment. So if we do, and we looked at various other structures, and if you have questions on those various other structures, I can opine on them. But we have landed on this extraordinary redemption provision, which is very limited in scope. It is just tailored to the decision on should a lease happen, a privatization of the airport. So it's very narrow. We think investors would be open to that type of ERP, extraordinary redemption provision. And we don't think that it will cost the city anything. What it will cost us is an interest rate cost, which will probably reduce the savings of the deal, the transaction.
Can I ask just a couple of basics? So the savings comes from a reduced interest rate, is
Yes.
that correct?
So debt
So
service to debt service comparison, our new debt service should be lower.
Well, that's, you mean the payment. When
The
you say
payment,
debt service,
yes.
you mean the payment.
The payment.
So the rate that we currently are paying on what's left outstanding of 93 million is what? What's that interest rate?
I don't know the exact number, but I can tell you what the potential savings are.
What's the interest rate of the new?
The interest rate of the new.
I mean,
believe
you're
it's
saving
like
the money because of the interest rate, or
The new
what-
is like 2
The average interest rate on the
refunding.
refunding is around 2.8%.
that's the current average interest rate, or
No,
that's the
The
new?
new one.
The
That's
new
the
is
estimated
2.8,
refunding.
okay, and on the old, it is?
Or 5% bonds, right?
They're 5%.
Okay, so the money is gonna be saved because the interest rate is gonna be
Yeah,
lower.
exactly.
Is the term of the refunding, the $93 million, we owe that now, we'll pay that off, we'll refinance it at a lower interest rate, over what term?
Same term.
So it would
We're not
be,
extending the debt.
you're not extending the
It's
term
not
of
a-
the debt.
it's not
Okay,
allowed.
those were, those were just the simple questions that I was asking. So the same term, and through that, what you're doing is you're taking the savings of the difference in 5% and 2.8, that saves some money, and you're taking that payment amount and paying off the new 25 to 35 million. Is that correct?
No.
No.
Okay, so how do you get the new 25 million out of
We-
the
we
same
would-
existing payment?
The current, and this is still very evolving, but the new $25 million would be another bond issue, a new money bond issue layered on top of it.
I think
Which
to
would
your-
have a payment that would go along with
So I think to
it.
your point, Mayor, the savings that the airport achieves helps reduce the cost of the additional $24 million.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily pay for $24 million.
Okay, so the city will be taking on an additional debt of up to $35 million at some interest rate, hopefully somewhere in the same neighborhood as what you're doing the refunding on.
Mhm.
So that will require a new payment, and the combination of the old payment and the payment on the refinanced part and the new payment will be more than the payment we're making now.
No.
No.
All right, well, this is, I mean, these were the questions that I had earlier. I've had them for a while, and I've just been trying to understand
That's fair.
what that model was. And I understand fully that it's the comptroller's bailiwick here to figure this out, but we do have a process here where the Board of E&A and then ultimately the Board of Aldermen have to approve this, so I was trying to understand the very basics
Yeah.
of this transaction. Okay, so we don't know how much more the payment will be, or
I,
when we get the new debt, or we're gonna make the same payment?
I think, let's say we layered it on, we should be a little bit less both of those transactions together, a little bit less than the previous transaction as a whole.
Our
Because-
payment, if we just take it into everyday people's, our payment will be less with the 93 million in debt, plus the up to 35, 24 to 35, whatever you figure out. The total sum of those two payments will be less than the payment that we're making now on the 93 million.
I don't know how granular you want me to get, but.
I just want to know, is it more or less?
No, but
Not granular at all, just is
No,
it more or less the same?
I've been answering the question, no, it won't be greater.
Okay.
And the 93 plus the 35
Rhonda,
is,
were you wanting to say something? Oh, okay, sorry.
there, when you issue a bond issue, you have something called premium.
Yep,
That's generated that helps offset the amount of par that you're paying debt on.
okay.
So we're actually estimating that the par amounts will end up being less in total than the previous 93 million, or around the same. So, and with
What I would
the-
add,
sorry.
Ramon, is we haven't decided, Mayor, on what the final structure is for the refunding, whether we want to take those in even payments over the remaining life of the bonds, or whether we want to wait, maybe take some of them up front to benefit the city before.
Make a littler payment up front and the higher.
Exactly.
But that was sort of the same structure of the one that we're refinancing, right? We're headed into some higher payment levels.
If we structure for level savings in the current refunding, and then schedule the new money piece to sort of wrap around what the airport already has, yeah. So we haven't finalized the structure.
I know this is probably boring to a lot of people in this room. Sorry, but
It can't get very
we haven't been able to, I haven't been able to understand those answers. So, personally, I'd like to vote on this at the next E&A meeting, which I know is a budget E&A meeting, but I believe we could, if we wanted to, we could add this to the meeting on the 29th.
I'd be happy to do that.
So if we're gonna do that, I guess I would move to divide the question. I know we have a motion on the table right now to approve 1 through
Can
6.
I just ask a question? So, as long as if the board gets this out by May 17th, which is very easily done, and we take this up on the 29th, doesn't change the deal at all. Because otherwise, if it will change the deal at all, I want to tell you, David, like, that's impossible to do before May 17th.
It will get really tight.
And when you're talking about something being really tight in terms of financing, from my experience as comptroller for all these years, you really don't want to go down that road
But
to
we're down that
begin
road.
to
It's
start
impossible
to
to do.
erode the savings. I don't know what you guys
No, I'm
know
talking
about financing, but what
by
I know
law.
is
I'm talking
that
about by
some
law.
things really need to stay out of the public view in terms of discussion in order for people who are going to be looking at how this city operates and its management and its leadership going forward with the financing of this substance. You really need to understand that certain things shouldn't be put into a box and tied tightly as you're trying to do. You're trying to move this for 2 weeks for your own convenience.
No, that's
Well,
not
yes,
true.
that
No,
is,
that's
that
not
is
what I'm
very
saying. That's not
true.
true.
That's not what I'm
And
saying. No.
let me begin to say,
By law.
well, he just said it, he just said it
No,
would be
but here's-
tight.
no,
And you're
but-
sticking
no.
it to the law of the
No,
Board of
no.
Aldermen, which is a
No,
local
the
law.
of the city.
That's a local law.
We-
That's an ordinance. So we're not talking federal tax laws.
No,
We're
no.
not talking
No,
the
to
market,
put-
the Wall
to-
Street, which is what I'm talking about.
No,
What
madam.
you're doing is belittling the financing
No,
of a
madam
city that
counsel.
we're trying to call a big city. That's what you're doing.
No,
Madam
that's
Counsel,
not.
That is what
I
I'm
passed an
hearing, and if
ordinance.
there's anybody hearing anything different,
No, madam,
than what I'm hearing,
Madam
you're
Counsel.
belittling the process. You're saying that the process begins and ends with the Board of E&A and the Board of Aldermen on a financing this substantial.
But
We're
it
trying to
does
be
have
a
to go
world-class
through.
city, but we're acting like a too
You
big,
can't do this
small
without
town.
passing it into law.
and that
there's
is
a
not
process.
the kind of city that we ought to be acting like. That is not the kind of leadership that should be
If you
shown
can
at
find
this
a way-
table
if
today.
you
It's
guys can find a way
ridiculous.
to do this without passing
It is
it into
really
law, tell me how
ridiculous.
that's done.
Really ridiculous for
Tell me
you
how a
to
city
try
does
to
it without
narrow
passing
and
it,
confine
without
this
passing it.
financing and to, I mean,
If you
If
have
this
to
is what-
pass an ordinance, all
if you're
I'm
gonna
trying
do
to
this-
all I'm attempting to do, and, you know, I'm sorry.
If you were going to do
No,
this,
I'm-
you should have talked to me, you should have called my office, you did not.
The minute we got out of the meeting.
You did
today,
not,
we
Madam
did
Mayor,
call
you
off.
did not.
We did, I did.
You did not.
We spoke to Jim today.
You
right?
called today, today is the day of the meeting. You
Madam
had that, you
Comptroller,
had
there've been a
this,
lot of
you've had
emails.
this 24 hours, you've had this 24 hours.
There've been a
Well,
lot of
here-
emails
There's
back
been,
and forth.
and I've read them all.
And
I don't know
and
where you've been, but I've read them, I'm
I-
up to date on this.
No, I read all of them
6
too,
months
but
ago, we put this
this
process that
is-
you're talking about in place.
We
We
also
formally
spoke
put
to-
this process
when
in
we
place
received the bill
6
at
months ago.
3:08.
And now you're saying that you just don't know fiddly about diddly.
When the bill was received at pre-ENA.
Now, when the
Hold on a
privatization
second, hold on.
contract
Hold on a
came up, you
second,
took
hold on.
15 minutes
No,
of our
stop.
time.
That is not germane.
That is
to
what,
we're talking
it is
about.
very
It
germane,
is not.
because you're
It's not.
saying that you need more time.
It's not.
It
Hold on a
is the
second.
manner in which you want to take the more time that's bothering me. You
By law,
choosing.
by law, I mean, forget about anything else. We have to introduce a bill at the Board of Aldermen. It has to be introduced, first read, that's the first week.
Are you saying
Then
you
it-
won't do
no.
that?
I'm saying that's exactly what we're going to do.
Then
And so,
pass
hold on
this
a second,
today,
hold on a
Mr.
second.
President,
So-
please.
so then-
Pass this
so- no,
today.
So then the bill is, when it's
Pass this
first read,
today
that's
so
the
that you
first
won't
reading.
cause my office any more
It then-
angst.
It then goes
Going
to
back
a
and
committee.
not passing it
comes
today
out of the
and
committee,
having
and it has to
emails
be
with
read 2
questions
more
coming
times
to
on the
my
floor of the
office
board
is
before it's
very
adopted.
stressful.
I just asked him.
No, I'm
if that
sorry it's stressful,
timetable
but-
works, and that's the 17th. It cannot be done. I mean, that's when it can get done, right? If we suspend the rules, we can possibly get it done a week earlier, right?
You're
Here's the
belaboring
thing.
this
Here's-
issue,
here's
it's
the-
just
here-
really
here's the-
interesting
here's
to
the
me.
thing. We-
This
we
out of
sus-
36 years
we
of
suspend- we
mayors,
suspend
and
the
I've worked for
rules.
24 years
We
of 3
suspend the
mayors.
rules
This is a
to get
first,
an
and I'm
earlier
putting that
meeting.
on the record because this is unheard of.
It's a
That's
first
not-
to ever
This is
try
a-
to
That's not
understand a
gonna come out.
financing
This is a
transaction.
first to try
The
to
Board of
stop it
ENA.
at
No.
a board of ENA.
I wanna be
in my
really clear
24
here.
4 years, in my 24
I
years.
personally am not trying to stop this, I'm just
Me
trying to,
either.
I'm just
Well,
trying to
then,
understand.
I
I
support
would
it.
like to
I'm
move
just
this
trying to
today.
underst-
I would like this to be adopted today.
Again, here's what I'm saying. You're asking me to vote on this 100-page bill that I have not.
I
had-
renew
hold
my
on a second,
motion
that I have not
to
looked at.
pass items
And
1
then
through
when I go to
6.
the Board of Aldermen, I'm gonna have to explain a 100-page bill that I have not had a chance to look at. And if there are things in this bill that are, if
You
this
guys
bill is.
have a choice
if
to
this
either do
bill
the
is
right thing
incomplete-
today.
If this bill
or
is
not.
incomplete, I own it at that point. You understand that, right? This is just the first stop. When it goes over the Board of Aldermen, that's when the real work begins, and I own what I'm voting on in here. I'm not even sure if this thing is even complete yet. And all I'm telling you.
Or
all-
what are you
all I'm
asking me?
asking-
So
all
you're
I'm
really,
asking
really
is that on the
gonna say
29th
that you're not sure? Or is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying
I'm real-
is, it
okay,
makes
that's fine.
no
That is
difference whether we take this up today or the 29th.
It makes no
It's
difference.
still gonna go to the
Financing
bo-
makes no difference to you. I'm hearing
The
you loud and
schedule
clear.
can be
The scheduling
completed.
that I have put forth, the scheduling that my office has put forth makes no difference to you. I'm
That
hearing you
is not
loud
what
and
was
clear.
said. That's
I'm
not
hearing
what
you
was
loud
said.
and
That's
clear.
not what we're
No.
saying
My
at all.
professionals have advised me, you have heard, we have been talking
Okay,
about this
I
for
just
more than a
asked you-
year. I have been fine, and you're saying it makes no difference.
just
I'm
asked you-
hearing you loud and
No, I
clear.
just asked you a professional. I just asked him.
They're still present.
Here's what, there isn't anybody in this room that can change the city charter by the 17th. That will not happen. And the city charter demands that the board bills are read out aloud 3 times on the floor of the Board of Aldermen and has an opportunity for the
And
public
that
to
is
weigh in.
why it's
And
important
that's
to
why
pass this
schedule
today,
is the fastest schedule you can. we
So-
can
You're
achieve.
trying to push something
Between
back
now and then,
when you should be
between
passing
now-
this today.
Between now and then,
You should
We
do the
can
right
follow
thing
the
and pass it
natural
today.
course
Do
of
the right
of the
thing,
board and be
It
President
can
Reed,
be
and pass
amended
it
at the
today.
Board of Aldermen.
Yeah, and
So
if it's
why should it
amended
be
at the board-
amended, Madam Mayor?
I don't know, maybe it doesn't need to be amended.
Then,
And
that's
if it's
correct. So
amended
why
at the
not pass
board,
it
it
today
would
if
have
it
to
can
come
be
back
amended at the
for
Board of
another
Aldermen?
hearing.
Why not
Another
pass it
hearing.
today if you want to amend it at the board?
That's
What
the
is the
other
reason why
problem.
you don't pass it today?
Well, you just said it. because
You can
it-
amend it at the Board of Aldermen,
guess what
therefore you
happens?
can pass it today.
Guess what happens? You amend it at the Board of Aldermen, and it comes back, it'll have to, it will land right back.
It
over
will
to
have been
ENA
approved
for
before it
another-
goes to the airport commissioners if we
depending
approve
on
it
the
today.
changes that come out of the Board
But
of
if you
Aldermen,
insist
we may have
on
to take
not
it back
approving
up
it
here
today,
again.
that's gonna be on you, not on the Office of
This
the
isn't an
Comptroller. We have
approval.
come,
You're right.
This
we
isn't
have
an
come
approval.
prepared today, and we have presented in good faith and in
Well, I'm not gonna vote.
in
Let me
best,
make this
in
easy.
best
I will not be
practices.
voting on a 100-page bill that I have not had a chance to look
I
at.
hear you loud and
It
clear.
is not gonna change the timing of it.
It's
If
not.
this thing is
And-
passed
and
by
you have
May
been
17th,
adamant,
there's
and
no-
I
if-
accept
If
it.
you're saying that this deal is dead because we can't pass it by May 17th, I'm telling you the deal is dead today anyway, because that's
So a savings
impossible
is
by
to
law.
you.
Now,
and-
if
and
May
I don't-
17th works, May 17th works, that's what we're talking about meeting, is May 17th. If we wanted to have it before then, without suspending the rules, this thing needed to be to us a month ago, right? That's the only time frame we're gonna be able to meet. That's law. If you wanna change that, do a petition, change the charter. Short of a full election of the voters in this city, that's the timeline we're under. Anything else is just a bunch of background noise. So that's what I'm saying. I have not had a chance to look at this 100-page bill. I think it is a great idea, and I want to support it.
It's not an idea, it's
It
a
is-
process,
it
and
is
it's a
great
finance,
thing.
and it's a
I
refunding.
want to support it. I want to support it.
Then do it.
Okay, I will.
Do
And
it
I'll tell you
today.
exactly how I'm gonna support it. I'm
You
gonna
do it
support it
today.
by taking it to the Board of Aldermen, assuring that it gets a quick committee hearing, assuring that the committee hearing is scheduled as quick as possible, and that there are hearings, and we can get it out of committee for the next thing, right? And then when it comes to the full Board of Aldermen, I will work to ensure that this
The
thing is
level of
perfected.
scrutiny you
And
have
then it
shown
goes to
today
the
on this
third reading
financing
calendar.
that I
So-
have presented is unacceptable. That is to you, Mr. President, as well as you, Madam Mayor. But I will accept what you are saying. You are saying that there is no way that you're going to approve this today, and I hear you. But the
It's not.
level of scrutiny that you've shown is unacceptable to me, and you need to hear that loud and clear today. And you need to hear it from me, and that's
So
all
if
I'm
I
going.
could just say, I
The level
appreciate-
of scrutiny
I
you
heard
have
that. You've
shown
said that several
is
times.
unacceptable. And
I
I need
just-
you to understand that the power of the comptroller's office to do this financing is there,
And I
and we have
respect it,
come
yeah.
prepared.
Yeah, I think it
However,
should be
what
done.
you've done is
But
to
look
attempt
at-
to belittle that power,
No,
and I'm
no,
hearing
I
you
have not
quite
at all.
well today. If
I
you
have not
don't
at
think
all.
that you're doing that, then that is a problem that you
I
have.
I have not at all.
It's not my problem. That's a problem that you have on this day.
No, I have not at all.
Sure, no problem.
Not at all. And then the thing is, we're gonna be moving with it. at
You can do
light
whatever
speed
you
at the
like.
Board of Aldermen.
After this
And
day,
then when we bring it
as the
back
charter
up-
has given me charter responsibilities, and you decide to belittle them, do what you want.
I did not.
I'm done.
Oh, okay. All right. So here's my commitment. My commitment is to work to get this done and work within the confines of the law, what we have the power to do. All of our chartered power at the Board of Aldermen to work to get this done. I outlined the schedule with you.
You've outlined the schedule for my office and for my professions.
The comptroller's
I got
office,
you.
the comptroller's office outlined the exact same schedule that I outlined earlier, right? So it's clear that this is
I am
the ti-
disappointed,
It's clear
and
that
it's
this is the
unacceptable.
schedule, right?
So,
It's clear that this is the schedule.
Your
What
schedule.
I'm saying is, after I get a chance to read this, we take
Because
this
this
up
is
on
not
the
the only
29th
schedule
at the
that's gonna
Board of
come
DNA
before the
and this-
comptroller's office for approval. But
I
we're
hope-
gonna,
I
but we're
hope
talking
you
about
don't-
so
this
you're
one
just
now.
saying that
I am
you'll hold
saying
up
that the
something else. I
usurping
get
of the
that.
power of the comptroller's office is
We're not
unacceptable
usurping.
I'm not
today.
doing that.
It is
So I would like
unacceptable
to
today.
suggest a couple of
and I don't
things.
like it.
One, there is a motion on the table. There was a motion to approve items 1 through 6. There was a second
I
for
withdraw my
discussion.
second.
you're gonna withdraw your second? Okay.
So now the choice is we have the motion for 1 through 6.
So you withdrew your second, so we don't have a second on that motion. So is there a motion to approve items 1 through 5?
I move that we approve items 1 through 5, and at the same time, I'd like to take item 6 up was it on the 29th?
Yes.
On the 29th, and I think we should make sure that that's duly noted and posted so that we can take this thing up as soon as we meet on the 29th.
I have a house closing on that
Could I-
day, and I know that my personal life and what I have already planned is gonna come before that item on the 29th. So I don't want to cause an issue, but that had been planned
We can move it.
months ago, and you know, you
Well, the
guys
29th is-
have,
We
you
can
guys
move it
have
earlier.
vacations, you guys have things that you plan, but you try to
The
put.
29th is when we are
the-
supposed to
that's
be
a
voting
Monday.
out the budget.
That's a Monday.
But that's an
And
ENA
also
meeting on the
I
schedule.
have also on my personal schedule,
Yeah.
another appointment on that day.
Okay.
Normally, the vote out the budget comes at a time where, you know, you vote out the budget and then we can get out and do other things. I have another appointment on that day.
Okay,
And so
I'm
I
happy to
don't-
change the time of it.
I'll change it
To whatever-
Okay,
whatever
we'll
works-
change the time.
Whatever
Except
works for you.
Fridays.
Okay, because this
Except
is
for
just,
Fridays
it's
during work.
unacceptable
Yeah,
to, you know,
whatever
they
works
have
for you, let's
to
do
have
it.
to put my plans, you know.
Yeah, oh, no,
on the
we get
side.
it.
And you guys are, move this meeting to Tuesday so that you, Madam Mayor, could go on vacation.
No, I'm
this
not going on
Friday.
vacation.
Well, somebody didn't want to meet, so it wasn't my office.
Whenever
On
you
Wednesday.
want it,
Wasn't me.
whatever works for you, I'll be in my schedule to make it. Except for Friday at 10 o'clock when I have a full board meeting.
Yeah,
Don't
see,
do
there,
that to
there
me.
you go.
Other-
There you go, it's always you
No,
or
no,
the
listen,
mayor,
I
and not
have
the
to run the
comptroller.
board meeting on Friday. Anything other than Fridays at 10 o'clock when I have to run the board meeting, I'll be here.
Okay,
I will.
there's a motion
I
to
move
approve
that we-
items 1 through 5. I'll second that motion.
And at the same time, sure that item number 6 is duly posted, so we take it up.
And we'll,
Take that
let-
up.
let's
You're
vote-
basically
let's vote
taking
on-
over item 6, that's what I'm hearing.
no,
Which is
let-
from
let's
the,
vote on the
from
motion
the
that's,
comptroller's
let's
office,
have
and
two
you
motions.
decided to take that over and move it to, so that's what you decided, I mean,
Yeah, I move that.
No, we haven't
pass-
actually decided anything because we haven't taken a vote yet.
I move that
So
we-
let's,
I move for pass adoption of items 1 through 5 as printed.
I'll second that. All in favor of items 1 through 5?
aye.
Aye. Items 1 through 5 are passed. Now, go ahead.
I move that we bring up item 6 for passage at the earliest possible ENA meeting, whenever the comptroller
And
and
our-
everybody schedules will work.
Our staffs can work to schedule that meeting.
Oh, our
at a-
staffs can work now, but they didn't work to find out the information that you had 6 months ago. I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
So, if I can get this out, that we'll work around your schedule on the 29th to whatever time you want to have the ENA meeting.
Okay.
So, okay, great, thank you.
Make the motion, you gonna adopt that motion or just
Oh,
leave that?
Is that's a motion, that's fine, yes. All in favor of adding
Was that a
item number,
Is that
item,
second?
Yeah, we did 1 through 5, so, yeah.
I'll second that motion.
for
If I
item
can
6.
restate it, all in favor of adding item number 6 to the agenda on April the 29th at a time to be determined,
Or whatever time. is
by,
determined.
that's convenient for the comptroller, and we'll take that up on the 29th. All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
No.
Okay. All right, now, we have a presentation from Paul Payne, our budget director, on the 2020 budget.
Thank you, Mayor, Madam Comptroller, Mr. President. I have a presentation going around that I'll be working off of if I get around. Starting on the second page of that presentation, you can see that it's a summary of the proposed budget for fiscal 2020. Totals $1.1 billion. It's 148.6 million to be exact, which is an increase of 2.9% over the previous fiscal year. And you can see in the chart below the component funds of that total. The general fund, being the largest fund of that category, is $519.3 million. $519.3 million, which is a 0.3% increase. So the general fund itself is pretty flat coming into next year. There are some increases, however, in the special revenue categories. It's $183.5 million, a 4.1% increase. That special revenue category has things such as the use tax, which is up $3.4 million in the budget next year. There's a special fund related to the Justice Center, which is up $3.7 million. The gaming fund, which is up $0.4 million. And some public safety sales taxes and economic development sales taxes, which are also up, which explains that increase in that category. In the grant funds, a total amount of $69.9 million. That's a 13.7% increase, reflecting grant increases in both the police department, the health department, and human services. The debt service fund, which is pays for our general obligation fund debt, is primarily flat at $5.8 million. Capital Improvements Fund represents $336.4 million, which is down 2.9%, mostly because of some expiring debt service payments. The Enterprise Funds, representing water and airport, is at $246 million. It's a 5.8% increase. The Water Division is up by $9.7 million as they are appropriating some capital improvements in the coming year and using a reserve fund for that.
So who is that now?
That's the Water Division. You'll see an increase.
Capital improvements, okay.
Yeah, and so you'll see a line item for about $11 million in their budget, and they're drawing from a capital improvements fund. And then the airport is up $3.7 million.
Revenues,
Excuse me?
revenues, the
Uh,
revenues in line?
Yes,
Increase.
yes. Actually, more in line. The internal service funds, which represent departments paying
So the
to,
airport is going where?
well, the airport revenue is up, yes.
Thank you.
The internal service funds, which are funds that departments pay to other departments, basically, that's $87.7 million, which is mostly the employee benefits fund, is up 3.5%. And you can see by the pie chart below, the general fund represents 45% of the total budget. On this next chart, on page 3, this looks at some of our primary tax sources. The earnings tax is up 1.5%, although it was lagging budget estimates for the current fiscal year. When we break that up, the individual portion of the earnings tax was actually up 4.1%, which is a pretty nice clip. It was the corporate receipts that were down over 30%. But most of them are received in the fourth quarter, so that could be a timing issue. But that's where we were at the end of the third quarter. Sales taxes were up. Well, the payroll tax actually was also up over 4%, which tells you something about payroll and job growth, which is a good thing. The sales tax, however, was somewhat anemic, as 0.5%. Traditionally, the sales tax has not been a big grower for us. Long term, it's about 1%, but it goes up and down. In recent years, it's been up a little bit more than that. But overall, we're still pretty close to revenue estimates for the current fiscal year on the general fund. On the fourth slide, this is sort of an illustration we do every year. It says, what's our general basic gap we face every year? And you see this go up and down. In recessions, it can be over $30 million and such. Well, this year's was somewhat tame, and it was in the low single-digit millions of dollars. So that's actually for a given fiscal year, it was actually not as bad as previous years. And walking through this illustration, you can see that the beginning revenue base, this year's budget was $517.5 million. Again, I don't have any adjustments on the estimates because they were pretty close to what we're expecting to see. But we did have some one-time source or declining sources. We got a payment from the parking fund, which I'm not relying on next year, as well as some of the state reimbursements on prisoner housing, which would be down next year because we got a one-time catch-up. But we do.
Prisoner reimbursement?
Yeah, we received about $8 million not all that was kept, I'm saying over and above the normal. So I've got estimates of about 5 plus next year, so 3 of that would have been a one-time. And then we've got net growth in major taxes at about 1.6%, with some of our other fees being flat, so that gives us 6.1, which results in a $519.3 million revenue source. So we have increases and decreases, starting with our budget base of 517.5. We've got the police department, and they have their matrix increases and civilian pay increases, and then overtime and health insurance of about 2.5. We did have police pension comparatively go down. There was a debt service from 2008 that expired that helped it go down a little bit. And then we also, with the fire department, the same thing. We have matrix and civilian pay, health increases, insurance increases of about $1 million. And then under fire pension, the old fire FRS, the fire retirement system, is now, with the last actuarial report, was 100% funded. So that was a reduction in the amount we need to contribute there. So all told, the fire pension costs went down $3.9 million. Then we have non-uniform pay increases, which is everyone else's 1.5% matrix merit increase, plus health insurance and pension. The pension was down slightly. That was about $2.8 million. And some of these other items are some just fixed increases. The Carnahan Courthouse debt is sort of balanced between the general fund and the capital fund. Personnel is doing a salary survey. It's proposed about $200,000. The city councilor's office had $1 million estimated increase in judgment costs. The information systems has a computer and licensing replacements, as I understand Windows isn't going to be supporting some old Windows operating systems, so we're going to need some new PCs as well as some licensing agreements. Comptroller's office has an increase in some of their building insurance premiums. Board of Elections, this year was this current fiscal year was an election year, so we had 4 scheduled elections. Next year we only have the 1 presidential primary, so we're seeing a reduction of about $900,000. So that every other year it goes up and down. Streets, we saw an active winter season this year, and so we do have an increase related to salt, replacing salt, $200,000 or $300,000 there. And then we also are seeing another $300,000 increase in refuse disposal costs related to the tonnage, as well as some of the costs of increasing costs of disposal recycling waste. Facilities management has increased costs related to utilities of about $800,000, and some rising fuel and repair costs on the equipment services of about $400,000. So that gives you about a $521.8 million. That's about a $2.5 million gap. So it's not, I mean, it's pretty mild compared to previous years and when you start out. But it still requires allocating reductions where necessary to keep the budget balanced. And you can see on page 5, slide 5, so we did have some minor budget cuts scattered throughout of about $1 million. And then special fund revenues of about $1.5 million. These will be where special fund revenues increase, such as the use tax, about $1 million there. Gaming fund was actually down on the police side, but it was up on the capital side. The public safety trust was up $100,000, and then the old 2008 public safety sales tax, which was up, we were making up for a deficit in the prior year, so that was a one-time, so that was up $800,000. So between those reductions and then those changes in other funds, that's how we maintain the balance. Some of the other highlights on slide 6 by department, these do not include the ones I already discussed. Let's say that general government and finance, mayor's office was down a position. They had increased salaries there, and that's about $100,000. The personnel, insurance, and consulting costs were down a couple $100,000. City councilor staffing costs were up about $400,000. And the comptroller's office had some miscellaneous increase of about $100,000. In the non-departmental citywide accounts, we are funding the second year of the state audit, which is another, that's about a $50,000 increase. It's budgeted at $600,000. The assessor subsidy, because they had a fund balance there, it's down by $100,000. And then because of the reduction in debt on the capital fund side, we were able to move some of the debt obligations to capital, and this is the NGA payment of $1.5 million.
Reduction in debt where?
In the Justice Center on the capital
Justice
fund.
Center debt is down?
Yes.
Virtually paid off?
This year will be the final year.
That's what I thought, that's a fact.
Yes. Parks, Recreation, and Forestry, that negative $1.1 million, that's not cut. That's a move of that district debris program and 20 positions to the street department. So you'll see streets go up by that. Judicial offices were primarily flat, although we did restore 5 positions to the sheriff's office, so they got an increase of 5 deputy positions. Again, circuit court, circuit attorney, mostly flat in the general fund. County offices, other than the election board, which I talked about earlier, the medical examiner had some contractual services up about $70K. Recorder was down 3 positions. Street department, aside from the increases already mentioned in salt and refuse disposal, the debris program, that was a $1.1 million move from the Parks Department. They did last year have a one-time purchase of $250,000 in vehicles, so that was not repeated, so that's a $250,000 reduction. And then there was a shift of a position from the director's office to PDA. In public safety, other than the fire department's salaries, there were also some supplies and contractual increases of about $300,000. Corrections also had some increases in their contracts, although they did have some salary savings offsetting that, so that was about $400,000 net. And BPS, not much going on other than the utilities I talked about earlier, but facilities management has additional 1 position. On slide 7, just sort of a highlight of the general fund revenue outlook by major tax category. The earnings tax remains our largest source of revenue at $180 million in the general fund. I've got an estimated growth of 2% for next year. Typically on a 3 to 5 year, 10-year growth rates, 2.6, 2.9, 10 years about 2.1, so it's right in there. It still anticipates growth, but it's modest. The property tax at $62.4 million, up 1.5%. Again, 10-year growth rate is about 1.6%. Sales tax at $54.8 million. I've got it at 1% growth. Again, we've seen a little mix there. Long term, it's about 1. Recently, it's been higher, but then 5 and 10 years would be below that. So sometimes it depends on what the prior year did in terms of it jumps around a little bit, but it's usually generally below 1 or below. The payroll tax at 1.5%, it typically trails the earnings tax a little bit each year. The franchise utility taxes are up at 1.5%. The change you see in the intergovernmental payments, that's those prisoner reimbursements I talked about earlier, they're down 9.9%. Licenses typically don't grow that much because they're fixed on a fixed rate, and it's 0.1%. Departmental fees and fines, we will have some offsetting their decline. In the police department, there was one-time payment in there, which is going away for next year, so I knocked that down. And then the other department categories, for instance, that's be transfers and things. Those would be like the parking meter funds that we got over and above the normal, which was $1 million. So we're seeing a decline there. So you can see the total revenue estimate for general fund of 519.3. That's just a 0.3% increase. And the pie chart below says, for instance, shows the earnings tax at 35% of that total. I won't repeat on the next page all the ups and downs on various departments, but you can see it by department, general government at 28.9 million. It's up 9.6%. That includes both the ITSA as well as the increase in the city councilor's office. Finance up 4%. That includes the insurance increase and 2 positions in the supply division. Non-departmental was down 3.1%, mostly in the debt service. Parks, Recreation, and Forestry, that declined to 4%. Again, that's the move of the debris program. Judicial offices up 1.8%. Again, that includes the sheriff increases. County offices at 8.8 million. That's down 8.5%, reflecting the election board off election year. The 4.3% increase in streets is again the move of the debris program, as well as those increases for the refuse disposal and salt purchases. Public safety is about flat, 0.7%. Human Services was up 2.3%, and the Board of Public Services at $36.5 million, at 3.6% includes that increase in utilities I talked about for facilities management. Public safety remains about 56% of the general fund budget. On slide 9, these are some of the highlights for special funds. The first one being the local use tax fund. Actually, the local use tax fund is one of the few that have actually outperformed this year. It's up 13% year to date, and it's a revised estimate of $35.8 million. I think we're seeing a little bit more expansion of the base, seeing more online purchases being reflected in this, whereas before it was always mostly business purchases. I think you're going to see more consumer purchases help that, which is broadening the base, which is good for the use tax. In terms of allocations, the Affordable Housing Commission is receiving both its full allocation of $5 million, plus an additional $1 million, bringing in new funds of $6 million. And then they had also about $600,000 in unspent prior appropriations. So its total budget for FY20 would be $6.6 million. So that's about a $900,000 increase over the current fiscal year. The Healthcare Trust Fund received its full allocation of $5 million. And for building demolition, its regular allocation is $3 million. It will receive an additional $825,000. So that's compared to this year, which I think was just below $3 million, $2.9 million. That's another $900,000 increase. So that's 3.8. And the remaining funds there of excess use tax, we've got an allocation for forestry, a $350,000 allocation for forestry to supplement its weed and debris control program. And then the other amounts here are pretty much in line with this year. Refuse gets $700,000 for their bulky pickup program. Housing conservation is $2.3. The police department is $11 million, which is a $1 million increase there. The health division is $7.4 million, and human services $400,000. So the total budget, including the prior year balances for the use tax, is $37.6 million. In the economic development sales tax, as you recall, that ordinance specifies certain percentages allocated towards target areas. It's estimated at $21.1 million, including about a $471,000 balance in the neighborhood stabilization area. 60% of that goes for transit purposes, and that's been accumulating there in that fund. It's $12.66 million. Neighborhood stabilization gets 10%, and if you add in that $471,000 balance, it's $2.52 million. The workforce development allocated to Slate and Human Services is $2.1 million. Public safety infrastructure, that includes both funding a replacement equipment for our 911 system. It includes a warning system the second year for SEMA of about $100,000 a year, and then a financing that is going to be replacing or building a new public safety answering point, what was known as PSAP, of about $1.7 million. And that would be housing all our emergency 911 personnel and managing the calls for emergency services, both EMS, fire, and police. The final piece of city infrastructure at 10% is $2.1 million, and that is being budgeted in the city's capital fund. So the total budget for the economic development sales tax is $21.51 million. I should point out also on the gaming fund, revenues continue to be up. It was 4.6%. I've seen them plateauing recently in the last couple of months, but that's still good compared to where we were a couple of years ago. On slide 10, this relates to Proposition P, which is the half-cent public safety sales and use tax that was approved in 2017. Sales tax revenue is estimated at $21.1 million. It's a bit higher than the other half-cent because this particular tax isn't subject to TIF, so it is a little bit higher than what a normal half-cent would be. And then also the use tax increase related to this sales tax, unlike the other use tax, which I talked about earlier, also goes into this fund by ordinance. So that's estimated at $4.1 million. So the total Prop P fund there is $25.2 million. And of the sales tax portion, 66% is allocated towards police. $13.9 million of that, plus an $800,000 balance that they would have there, is to pay for the pay and benefits of the $6,000 increase they got this year, including $3.6 million in pension costs associated with that. And then additional $1.2 million for fleet replacement equipment that we're utilizing in that fund. The fire department receives 28% of that amount, which equates to $5.9 million, and then we're also appropriating some of that fund balance that's accumulated to pay the $6,000 pay increase they got this year, plus benefits. The pension cost was about a little under $1 million, and then $1.2 million of that also for equipment. And then the circuit attorney by ordinance gets 6% of that, which is $1.3 million. So the 22.36 is the sales tax portion of the Prop P. Under the use tax portion, 25% is allocated to after school and jobs. And again, this year, that's youth jobs at $325,000 in the Director of Public Safety's budget, and as well as $700,000 for youth cadets at the police department. That's $1.025 million. Circuit attorney, again, gets a chunk of the use tax piece. That's 7.7% for pay, staff pay and contractual services of $300,000. Rec programs funded both with positions, 11 positions, recreation division, and some contractual programs, the director of parks, just under $1 million there. Building demolition, 17.3%, that's $675,000. If you combine that with the building demo and the use tax, building demolition totals about $4.5 million next year. And then finally, social works and mental health needs funded at 25% of the total, and that's in the human services department. 2 positions and some contractual work, as well as the subsidy for the public administrator of $70,000. That's just over $1 million. Moving to slide 11 on discussing the capital fund. The proposed capital budget is $36.4 million. That's a decrease of $1.1 million, mostly because of debt service going down this year. All half-cent capital sales taxes are fully allocated. One of the big things in the change in this year's budget is we are adding an additional $1.25 million to fund a rolling stock fleet replacement of about $8 million, close to $8 million, maybe somewhat shy of that, to replace some of our rolling stock. Of course, about $20.4 million of this is for debt service, so about 56% is this already obligated. But you can see that along the pie chart there, existing citywide debt's $14.7 million. The ward improvements will be getting $9.2 million. Major parks and neighborhoods, $7.6. The rec center is fully allocated about a little over $500,000. And the police department improvements of $1.8 million. So it's fully allocated, but we're still every year addressing some of our longer term capital needs. On slide 12, this is highlighting some of the personnel total changes. In the general fund, it's actually up 17 positions. Most of that can be identified. Mostly the sheriff is up by 5. The fire department was up by 6, but that was mostly just a shift because one of the SAFER grant, which expired during the current fiscal year, we'll move these positions up to general revenue now. And then ITSA was up by 1, police was up by 7, and then recorder was down by 3. And you'll see those tables in the specific tables in the annual operating plan appendix. On the special fund category, at 488 positions, that was up 4 positions. The special parks fund was up by 1, and the economic development PDA was up by 2. In the grant fund categories, 258, that's up by 11 positions. That was a decline. Again, the offset to the SAFER grant expiring, that also went down by 6, but then we had increases in block granted by 4, health and hospitals by 3, and then human services are up by 2. In the enterprise funds, water division was up by 3, that's 899. Total water division was up by 3, and the airport was up by 9. And the total personnel count for all funds was 6,669, was an increase of 45 positions. And you can see in the bar chart below, a big chunk of those are public safety. Slide 13 is just to give you an idea about the 10-year history. Again, we're still down. General fund was still down over the last 10 years of 246 positions, and overall we're still down about 433 positions. Slide 14, this is just an annual tracking of our costs for pension contribution and pension debt. As I mentioned, the pension costs were down a little bit this year. There was an expiration of a 2008 bond issue that we had finished paying off this year. This also includes increases related to the Prop P pay increases. Of that $81.3 million, $38.8 million of that is for police retirement, 13.8 of that is for fire retirement, and 28.7 of that is for employee retirement systems. And the details are on the next page. Which highlights both the valuations of the systems and how well they are funded. Under the employee retirement system, its current market value of $827.4 million. The actuarial value is $831. It's a funded basis on an actuarial basis is 83.4%. Fire retirement, as I mentioned on the FRS, 477.2 million. And the actuarial value is 473.8. That's why it's over 100%, just barely over 100% funded, so there would be no contribution next year. Meanwhile, the fire retirement plan, which is the plan we created 5 years ago as part of the reform package, it's 77 million in assets, 74.8 in actuarial liability, so it's just under 62% funded on an actuarial basis. And the police retirement system at 796.2 million, with actuarial value of 788.6, which gives it an actuarial basis funded of 78.4%. And you can see the cost per system, the 81.3 million divided by each, allocated to each of those three systems. And the cost per participant, you can see below on the chart. Again, so from a standpoint of funding, we're relatively well funded, although we are still, and as my note says, we're at the end of a pretty long cycle in growth in the market. So it's still a challenge, and it's something that I remember in the 90s when you were at this point, most of the systems were 100% funded. And so it's something that if you're at the end of the cycle and you're only 80% funded, meaning you still face the potential downturn and reforms are still needed to get our costs.
Can I ask a quick question
Sure.
on this pension? So if I understand correctly, the contribution for police is 31,000 per police officer.
The cost, that includes some debt service.
The cost,
Yes,
that's
right.
correct, yeah. The
Right.
amount that we're paying this year,
Mhm.
thank you for that. 19,000 for each fire department person.
Yes.
7,000 for each non-police, non-fire.
Yes.
Do you happen to know, because I guess the city has to pay the employer portion of FICA
FICA.
on that.
Yeah.
So if you added that in as a per employee cost, how would that compare?
I-
I don't expect you to know that off the top of your head, but. I'd be
Actually, I looked it up
interested
just yesterday.
You did?
I thought about when I was doing this, and it would be, I'm thinking the average is somewhere around 46, 47, so you're looking at what, 4 or
Okay.
5,000, it would be maybe 11,000 or something if you
Okay,
threw in
so you add
FICA.
those two together, okay, thank you. Okay, thanks, Paul.
On slide 16, this is actually a good news story when it comes to our reserves. If you remember last year at this time, we started talking about programming in a contribution. Because the reserve level, as you know, is necessary for weathering the economic downturns, and we had used that significantly in the last recession, and we had been, although we had been building up on the cash basis side, it had taken a long time to get back to where we were. Well, in the current fiscal year, we received the $10 million payment from the parking fund, which was a significant contribution, and then we also budgeted 1.5% of salaries as a sort of a way of contributing each year. That was another $3.4 million. So by the beginning of the FY20, we should have $31.2 million in our fund balance on a cash basis. Cash basis, I mean, a little different than how they calculated in the accrual on the annual reports, but which is a market improvement where we've been. Now, our old target has always been a minimum of 5% of the budget, although we're told mostly that should be always regarded as a minimum simply because I've seen targets as high as 2 months of expenditure. Well, that's pretty high. Although 10% would be reasonable, and I think that's what we talked about both with our long-term financial plan, and so that's something that we're going to try to go to.
I'd like to get to.
So, but we are continuing to include in this budget the 1.5% of salaries, so that's another $3.4 million going into next year's.
So at the end of this budget?
Yes.
You would hope that we'd be just under 35 million?
If everything goes to plan, yes.
Yeah, okay, that's
Yes.
the plan.
And we hope to do that as on the annual basis until you get to that 10%.
I am in agreement with that.
So on slide 17, just a recap. Total budget FY20 is $1.1 billion. That's a 2.9% increase from the previous fiscal year. It includes the second year budgets for new funds, including the economic development half-cent sales tax and the half-cent public safety sales and use tax from Prop P, with amounts allocated as specified per ordinance. Local use tax funds are fully allocated for affordable housing, plus an additional $1 million, as well as the building demolition, plus an additional, actually, that should say $825,000. as well as capital funds, the full allocations for the ward accounts and recreation accounts in the capital fund. The general fund at $519.3 million is a 0.3% increase, and it bridges a modest gap as compared to prior years with a mix of additions and reductions to maintain the balance. And we are maintaining that annual mechanism for strengthening fund reserves. In terms of the longer-term challenges, as I mentioned, I keep mentioning in the previous years, we've been riding this economic expansion. We don't know when that's going to end, but eventually it will, so we need to be prepared for that. So we've been working to strengthen our revenue and growth and reserves. We still need to pursue continuing pension reforms. And then this past year, we did the $50 million bond issue for GO debt, which helps with some of our infrastructure needs, and continue to look for ways to do that, particularly with the rolling stock and stuff. And that's the presentation.
Paul, let me just say, you do an excellent job on this. This presentation is really good. I know you work with all the department heads, comptroller's office, president's office
And my staff over here
on
as
this.
well.
And yeah, a round of applause for the budget department staff. This is a big deal, and you do a great job presenting it.
I'd like
So-
to also applaud you, Paul, for your hard work, and applaud your staff for always doing a great job. I like the additions that you have added to some of the areas like affordable housing, healthcare trust, and building demolition. I want to thank you for that. That is, pointed out here real clear. And I continue to see the increase in property tax for the city of St. Louis, which is also a positive point that I wanted to make, so thank you.
Absolutely. Good job. Thank you. Mr. President, you have anything?
That's
I have one more.
what you-
I second that. I have one more thing, and that is congratulations, Mr. President. He was sworn in this morning to, I think, the 4th term as President of the Board of Aldermen, which I believe is the longest serving. I don't think anybody else has served 4 terms. You got to still do those 4
Still
years, but
gotta
you've been elected to the
Yes, yes.
4th term. So
Thank you.
congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Congratulations from me as well.
Thank you.
Are we hearing from any staff departments on their budget today?
Well, none have been scheduled, but we do have the public hearing on Thursday.
Yeah,
I
Thursday
would
at
like
10
to hear
a.m.
from the airport director since she's here, if no one minds. While she's here, I would like to hear just simply an update on your budget. You have a 5-year plan, and I'd like to be reminded as to when that 5-year capital plan was, what year was it initiated? Where are we? Just a little bit, if the board doesn't mind.
I don't mind. Ronnie, give us the highlights of your passengers are up and that sort of.
So we did a 5-year strategic plan. We just completed year 4 of that strategic plan. That plan was put together along with the airport, the business community, and the mayor's staff, prior mayor's staff, to really take a look at the airport over the next 5 years, sort of the short term versus a longer term view. And so with that, we just had our report out from last year. By the time we get through the audit and all the financials, it takes a while. But it was a really strong year for the airport. The best year in 15 for passenger enplanements. So
Best year in 15 years?
just shy of 16 million passengers. From a revenue standpoint, we saw our revenues increase as well. A lot of that had to do with additional terminal rental rates because of the expansion of Southwest Airlines. Additional rental rates came in. We saw pretty significant transportation revenues up, ground transportation. Some of that had to do with our parking garage up, our taxi, not our taxis, our T&C revenue up, and then also the rental car revenue was up. The concession revenue saw a huge spike last year. Most of that came in the food and beverage because we've been adding additional food and beverage as a result. So we saw some significant increases. I think it was almost 13%, I believe, in our food and beverage concessions last year. All of that goes into the 4 categories that we have in the strategic plan, which is to grow the air service, the financial stability side, to make sure that we're part of the economic development of the region, and then the customer experience. So in all those 4 categories, the financial stability being the strongest, where we had all three of the marks were green in that. We did see another upgrade by the rating agencies last year. In the air service, we also saw pretty substantial increases there. So we saw new markets added, larger airplanes added, so that helped with the passenger growth. And then from the economic development standpoint, I think we ended up with about 286 permanent jobs. And then on the construction side, I think we had in excess of 400 construction jobs for the year at the airport with all the projects that were going on. So it was the best of the 4 years of a report out, so we have one more year left on that. Our fiscal year obviously runs till June as well, so we're already kind of halfway into this year, but it'll be a while before we see those final numbers. The first quarter also is starting very strong, so passengers are up about 5% even over last year's growth. So strong numbers coming into the first quarter.
Cost of employment, how do they compare 5 years ago?
I'm sorry.
Cost of employment.
Oh, our cost of employment was probably our best news story. So we ended up with a cost per enplaned passenger of $8.97.
I'd like to applaud you on that.
Because most of the cities, those cost of employments are in double digits, if I'm correct.
It varies all the way down from maybe $4 up to $40. So you see a wide variation, but for the size of being the second largest medium hub that we are, that sits very well in the industry as far as the average. So, and significantly down. We had a 20% reduction last year over year.
Awesome, 20%.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it. All right,
Motion
motion.
to adjourn this session of Board of E&A.
I second it. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.